Hey, good afternoon. It is Coach Randy Byrd for our Tuesday coaching call. It's every week, 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, 3:30 Eastern. So 12:30 Pacific time every single Tuesday. I've been doing this for 3 or 4 years now. We've got a great amount of database and calls we've done. And then we always put these into YouTube and to our podcasts and things as well. But thank you for being here. We've gotten to the new format with the webinar series. So you could chat in the chat on the side. I will answer any questions as we progress. But, it was a little busy with a bunch of people on the screen and moving around and listening and driving. So we're doing it in a webinar format series now, and I love it. And so basically, you're going to tune in on Tuesdays for just 30 minutes of coaching advice, 30 minutes of coaching fire, some nuggets, some business practices after 23 years in the real estate business. And I've been coaching for 10 years full time now, starting back 10 years ago when I coached for Tom Ferry and some of the top agents around the nation. I did that for 4 years full time. I was blessed to coach a couple clients that had over 1,000 transactions each, one in Utah and one in Calgary, Canada. And I've coached hundreds and hundreds of agents. I was going to say thousands, but it's definitely thousands of hours, probably 20,000 hours of one-on-one coaching with my clients now. And so today I'm going to talk about a couple of things. Today I'm going to talk about something that is, I refer to it as above the line and below the line activities. When an agent starts scaling in their business and they start getting to a point to where they have the ability to hire an assistant or start leveraging their business, we talk about above the line and below the line activities. Above the line is an IPA or income producing activity. I love using IPA because I like beer. There's also dollar producing activities. There's a lot of different acronyms for it, but I like IPA. Makes me think of a big, tall, stout beer that I don't really drink anymore. I moved away from beer. Maybe it was the high school days of doing Budweiser in a funnel, but I digress. IPA, income producing activity, is the highest and best use for an agent, and that's where you should spend 80% or more of your day in. And most agents will spend 80% of their day in administrative stuff. So I'm going to draw this line and let you know what this looks like. I'm going to try and share my screen and do a whiteboard. I have not tried this in a while. So I'm going to see if this works okay. And maybe it will, maybe it won't. We'll find out. Let's see. Content, background. I don't even see it now. Screens, background, side by side. Okay, I'm not going to do it right now. Zoom has changed so many things. I feel like an amateur when it comes to Zoom now. It's kind of crazy. But when we look at this, I've got a cool drawing board I'm going to get for my Zooms, like Pace Morby does. He does an amazing job with that. When you think of above the line, you just take a piece of paper and draw a line straight across the middle of it. You could do that now if you're with me. So take a piece of paper of any size, draw a line straight through the middle of it horizontally so you have a top and a bottom. Above the line is going to be everything we're going to write above that line. And below the line is all the activities that you should not be doing as a real estate agent. And there's an argument that you could even stop doing these immediately as you're new in the business, right? Because now we have the ability to leverage. We have ability to leverage to ISAs, or I'm sorry, VAs, virtual assistants in India and Pakistan and the Philippines, $5, $6, $7 an hour max, and they will do everything for you that's administrative. And if you need to learn it with them. Don't learn it, then teach them, right? That's a mistake that new agents will make. But back to this analogy, above the line are income producing activities that you want to do as the agent. And specifically, it's really only a short list of things. You could write this down. Servicing sellers, meaning taking listing, go doing the pre-listing potential, doing negotiating with the seller, signing the contracts, meeting with the seller to present offers. That's all servicing the sellers. And showing and servicing buyers. That's showing homes. Potentially that could be leveraged as well. But negotiating buyer contracts, negotiating the offers, negotiating the buyer request for repairs, negotiating all those things that have to deal with contractual dollars. That is an above the line function. And then obviously you have negotiating contracts, negotiating repairs on both sides of the transaction. All these things are above the line activities, income producing activity. The one and only other thing that's not servicing buyers and sellers that's above the line is prospecting. That is your responsibility. Prospecting means cold calling, door knocking, writing, ad copy, prospecting for new things. Writing ad copy could be leveraged, right? But you can't have somebody leverage jumping on a phone and calling people in a specific circumference or circle of influence or sphere of influence around your listings and around the areas you're trying to promote in, right? Calling for sale by owners, calling expires, all these things are income producing activity done by the agent and they should not be leveraged. Big, massive teams leverage it to lower agents on the team or even assistants and ISAs that I mentioned earlier, inside sales associate. It can be leveraged at some point down the road. But this is a dollar producing, income producing activity that's got to be treated seriously above the line. That should be 80% of your day. And if you don't have that many escrows and contracts and all that, and you're thinking, well, I only have one or two listings and I only have one in escrow, I'll bet you're spending 70, 80% of your day doing the paperwork. That's a mistake. You should be spending your time prospecting and going out there looking for more buyers and sellers. Okay, I can't beat this into enough. So I'm being bold, but this is a coaching call, right? Below the line activities, title, escrow, inspections, doing the repairs, meeting contractors, potentially showing buyers houses, because that's kind of one of those that are blended on that line. If you have the ability to go out and show a new buyer you've never met before, one or two houses, and then leverage that to your team, that's a good use of your time. But showing them 30 houses and then not writing an offer is not a good use of your time. So you should leverage that out. I always used to tell my client, I got this from my buddy Brent Gove. Hey, we have an appointment at 4 o'clock to open that house. I'm going to show it to you. Now, I have another appointment that's a conflict. So you don't mind who unlocks that door for you, do you? Because I'm going to negotiate all your contracts. I'm going to write the offers. I'm going to negotiate repairs, but I don't need to be in the house to do that. Right. So I'm going to have Bill meet you at the house. He's going to unlock the door. He's going to get out of your way and let you guys spend the time that you need to see the house and make sure you love it. When you love it, Bill's going to convey that to me and I'm going to do all the work. I'm going to write the offer. I'm going to write the repairs. I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to review the inspections. I'm going to review the contracts. I'm going to fight for you. You see how I blended those two below and above the line activities. That's the only exception to this, really, in my mind. So sitting there for 2 hours during the home inspection or the septic pumping is a complete waste of your time and it's irresponsible. I know brokers that require their agents to be at every inspection. I paused for a reason there. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous that a broker requires their agents to be at these inspections, and it stems somewhere from responsibility of liability. So somewhere along the lines, that broker thought that it was reduction in liability if that agent was there for the inspection. I think it's the other way around. I've been a general contractor for 23 years. If I was at the home inspection, I opened myself up to a certain amount of liability because of my experience and licenses that I hold as a general contractor. I'm actually superior to the home inspector if you think of it in that hierarchy. It would be reckless for me to walk around and point out things that the home inspector wasn't there to catch. That's his job. If you want a contractor, hire a contractor that is looking out for your best interest only. Because even if I notice something, even if I notice a piece of siding that was installed lying upside down or it didn't have Z metal at the top of the siding, so it's going to leak water, even if I notice that stuff, that's not my place, responsibility, or specialty. And actually, it could come off wrong to the sellers that they had their buyer's agent is picking out things in the house. So trust me on this one. Hire the needed professionals. If you see a piece of siding that looks wrong, report it and have it looked at. If the roof, you need a licensed roofing contractor, get them. I recommend them on every inspection. The home inspector is not a roofing contractor. The home inspector is not an HVAC contractor. The home inspector is not an electrical contractor. He's going to, you know what his extent of looking at the electrical is? He'll open the box and look for obvious misgroundings or loose lugs and different things in the power panel on the outside of the house. And then he'll stick a little contraption into each receptacle to just see if the polarity is correct and the reverse, the neutral is not reversed. That's it. They flip on and off lights and that's the inspection. An electrical contractor could come in and tell you, is it available for upgrades? Is it overamped? Is it drawing too many amps? What's the current code? Is there, inspections in the attic of electrical? All the things that an electrician can look at and know what they're looking for. Okay. You wouldn't dream of pumping your own septic and inspecting the septic, but a lot of times homeowners believe that they can inspect the house themselves with some success. I completely disagree. As a matter of fact, if they didn't want to hire these experts, I would make them sign their life away that they're taking the responsibility in their own hands of inspecting this house on their own. I vehemently disagree with it, and I'm going to make them sign a form that says that. They're going against my recommendations and they're inspecting this house on their own. So when something comes up later, when the dryer shorts out and it's always been tripping the breaker for all these years because it's the wrong size breaker on an appliance, for instance, that would have easily been caught with an electrical contractor, potentially a home inspector, they don't come back after me. I pull out that form. I go, look, I told you, and you went against my wishes. Here's your signature. Okay. But enough on that bandwagon because as a general contractor, that stuff's come up a lot. But the bottom line is these below the line activities, title, escrow. Now it's your responsibility to review these reports. But can you have an expert review these reports? Can you have another licensed agent on your team review these reports? Yes. Are you ultimately responsible for them? Yes. You better know your stuff. So if you're able to come in there and review those documents properly, that is your responsibility. Your responsibility is to review the documents, not to create the document. Okay. So when we're talking about above the line and below the line activities, I want you to think of it just that way. Okay. So for the people on the webinar, the people watching this later, draw that line on a piece of paper and IPA, income producing activities above the line, below the line is everything else. That means an assistant, gathering paperwork, sitting in inspections, title, escrow, transaction coordination. Too many agents, the first thing I see mistake that they make is they try to do all their own transaction escrows, and it's to save $350. Let's be honest. $400 is $400. I get it. But guess what? If you do that, you're going to spend about 20 hours on the average transaction, somewhere between 12 and 20, doing paperwork. Instead of hiring a TC, a transaction coordinator, to do all that for you so you can get back on the phone and get the next deal that transaction coordinator can then work for you, right? The dollar value is crazy. If you make $100,000 a year in commission, that is, and you divide that by, let's just do the math. I'll do it for you and I'll give you the numbers. $100,000 of commission divide by 2,080. That is how many hours are in the year, 2,080. That's $48 an hour. As every single hour you're working, $100,000 based on a 40-hour work week is $48. $250,000 is $150 an hour. $500,000 a year of income is $250 an hour, right? So when you look at that, you'll understand that now you're doing paperwork that is a $100, $200, $250 an hour task as you grow your business, rather than focusing on the activities that are worth $250 an hour, which is prospecting, servicing buyers, servicing sellers, and negotiating contracts amongst those capacities. So that's where I want to focus today, is helping you understand in the first half of our call is what to focus on in real estate. And the second half, I'm going to teach you in the prospecting side of the real estate business, how to prospect for real estate in a way that is going to help you grow your business. So we've defined what the team business looks like, where you are focused on income producing activities, above the line activities, and then you've leveraged everything out below the line activities. And before I leave this subject, I want to leave you with this. What is the very first hire in your real estate business? Let's just say you just got your license. You go out and you start really kicking butt. You've got a good database. You've got a good amount of people that know you from your phone, and you've just got a lot of contacts, and you get out there and you do 4 or 5 transactions in the first 30 or 60 days. What is the first leverage point in your business to hire? Most agents believe it is a buyer's agent. And most agents believe it's a buyer's agent because it's free. I can get a buyer's agent to help me show homes, but yet you only have 3 or 4 transactions or 3 or 4 listings, whatever it may be. And it's not a TC, transaction coordinator. That actually is your first hire, but it's not your first employee or way to scale your business. It is your assistant. Because if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. right? I want to say that again. If you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. So I've coached this for years. Your very, very first hire in scaling your real estate business. You could do it all yourself until about, let's just say 6 transactions a year, one every 2 months. You'll still be doing a lot of paperwork, but you could leverage that out to a transaction coordinator. You should be on the phones 3, 4 hours a day when you're new into the business, prospecting for new business. And I'm going to teach you some of those tactics and what to say here in a minute. But just to set the record straight, your very first true hire in your real estate business is your assistant. And the TC is the very first thing you use as a vendor in the space. It's really not your first hire, it's your first vendor, right? So, your very first transaction, please, please go out and get a transaction coordinator. I know agents that close 40, 50 deals a year, and they couldn't fight themselves through doing a transaction coordination for a home sale. That's because they shouldn't be doing that. I know agents that do 1,000 transactions a year, and all they do is look at the top line of what's needed within the negotiations of that business. They review and sign every change order, every counteroffer, every listing, every buyer contract, because that's their fiduciary responsibility to their team and to their client. But I promise you, they're not in the weeds on all the paperwork. They don't know if the water heater statement's filled out or not. They're assuming because they have a staff member that's checking boxes and making sure those things are done. All right. So enough of that soapbox. You know how I feel about it. I did the same mistake. I hired two buyer's agents in the beginning of my business, and I had a transaction coordinator, but I was still having them go out and look at everything so I can, have the life of luxury. And really, my job and really owed it to my clients, was to be marketing and prospecting, not only for new business, but the current business, right? Now, I'm going to give you a couple things you could say. So number one, if you're getting new into the business, you want to join as many things as you can: Seroptimus, Exchange Club, Rotary Club, local, anything, veterans organizations, anything you can, join as many of them as you can. And for now, that's not going to really be a top of the line activity, but it is if you treat it from a prospecting perspective. Because think about it, like when I joined the Exchange Club in Reading, we had about 130 active members, about 300 in the admin side of the business. So they didn't come to the meetings, they didn't have the same responsibilities, but they were kind of like social members. My golf course had 355 proprietary members that I joined and paid a fee to have access into the club, 355 proprietary members, but we had about 1,000 of these social memberships where they can come in and have drinks and eat food and charge a little food and beverage up and stuff. So I had access now to 1,300 people by joining a country club that cost me $300, $400, $500 a month. And so all of a sudden that database list became invaluable, right? I joined Santa Rosa Golf and Country Club in Santa Rosa, and I paid 2 years in advance just so I wouldn't get the feeling of wanting to leave, right? It was $1,000 a month. So it was like 25 grand just to pay my dues in advance for a year. That wasn't the food and beverage and all the other things. Sometimes that was the same number. And then it was $25,000 or $35,000 to join. So it's a commitment and an investment. But then I treated it like an investment. I treated it like business. And I was very purposeful about being involved in that, and signed up for a couple community committees, signed up for the Tuesday night men's league, hung around after golf instead of just going home. I'd hung around and got to know other members and got invited into little poker games and little dice games that happen afterwards. And all of a sudden I was in that circle, and they know that I'm a real estate broker and I'm always having that conversation, right? You could separate these two worlds. You could be a member of the country club and be a valid member without just completely peeing on them all the time about trying to get business. And you can do it in a way that is responsible, right? And there's a line, when you're so into it where they never see you working, that's a different thing. But I want you to be in the middle of that, not on your laptop and unavailable and on your phone on the golf course the whole time. That's not appealing either. They're not going to want to golf with you, okay? But I'm a golfer, so my golf analogies are true. But as you're working through these clubs, every club you join is typically going to have 100, 200, 300 members that are now part of your circle of influence, your SOI, sphere of influence. This is a very powerful, powerful opportunity for you to go out and say, hey, Jim, this is Randy Byrd over here. I just joined Santa Rosa Country Club. I saw you on the roster. I just really wanted to say hello and introduce myself as a new member. I really don't have any other agenda than that. But I was hoping maybe I can exchange contact information and just stay in touch. And that way I know who you are. And maybe we'll be able to golf someday together. I'm in the Tuesday Men's League and all that. Yeah, great. Send me your contact information. Guess what I'm supplying them? My business card, my email with my signature line in the bottom, Randy Byrd, eXp Realty, 10 million in sales, proudly serving veterans, whatever it is. That is a way of marketing that's passive marketing. And then you could always be purposeful about it as well, saying, "Hey, Jim, this is Randy Byrd. I just joined the club. I want to make sure I'm supporting the other members in the club and their businesses, and I'd love to reciprocate that. So, what do you do for work? Oh, you're a CPA. Awesome. How many clients do you handle? What's your specialty? Are you looking for more clients? I'm reaching out to a lot of the members to say hi. Can I promote you as I'm going down that road? We do a newsletter in my business. Would you mind if I promoted your newsletter into my newsletter? All of a sudden, you guys start exchanging newsletters. You're getting in their newsletter in front of 600 or 700 client, and they're getting in front of my newsletter in front of my 2 or 3 or 4 or 500 clients. That's true massive networking. And that's only one relationship when I told you I had 335, right? Some of them are retired. Some of them own mini storages. Some of them did nothing but golf. But I was being purposeful about my relationships with them and talking about what I can do to add value to me being in this club now. And then I was in curiosity. How long have you been in the club? Oh, you've been in here 20 years. That's amazing. What was it like 20 years ago? What's different now versus 20 years ago? Oh, they built a new clubhouse. When did they build that? About 8 years ago. You're learning about the club, you're learning about the history, and you're learning about that individual, and you're making friends. All right. And this is cold marketing. You have your cell phone, which the average person knows about 200 people in their cell phone. 200 people average. Some people, I have 5,800 clients in my cell phone. Everything from the guy that cleaned my carpet 7 years ago is in here to anybody I've ever done a transaction with, anybody I've ever transacted with, anybody I've ever met. I have a little system. I put their first and last name on the first line for their first name, and I put where I met them for their last name, and then the company, any other relevant information. So if I pull somebody up and it says Jim Duncan, I can pull up their contact information. I see Jim Duncan works at the ABC Plumbing Supply, and he's the guy at the counter. And I might even put what he looks like or where I met him. I met him at the bowling alley, but he works there, something like that. That's just mastery in owning your database and understanding what that looks like. And then my real estate database over a 23-year career has 58,312 contacts in it as we speak. Right? Everybody's a contact, good, bad, or ugly. I have plenty in there that say delete, don't answer the phone, don't call them. They're just jerks. But they're in my database because how else can I identify who not to do business with as well as who to do business with? All right. So we've talked about a couple things today on today's coaching call. Number one, the first half of the segment was dividing above the line activities that are dollar producing, income producing, servicing buyers, servicing sellers, negotiating contracts, negotiating repairs, negotiating time extensions, anything that's contractual. I want you to, and you have to be in that space. And then the second part of above the line is prospecting, forward prospecting in your business to always be growing. A good number, a top agent will be focused on adding 3 to 5 people to their database every week. 3 to 5 people added to their database every week on purpose. And that could easily be 3 to 5 people a day if you're really trying to grow your database and getting involved in that. Okay. Below the line activities are all the things you can leverage. And real estate is one of the most leverageable industries I've ever seen. I came from construction, and it's not easy to leverage a drywaller, a framer, a contractor, a vendor, but it is very easy to leverage everything in this real estate business. Matter of fact, I could probably take a listing and spend no more than 2 hours to 3 hours servicing my seller at the highest level, where they will give me a 10 review, but I spent 2 to 3 hours with them personally through the whole transaction. You've got about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour listing appointment. Maybe I come over and go over all the disclosures and go over all those things if that's an action and activity I do. And then maybe it's a couple times negotiating repairs or offers and all the things that we do, extensions of time, reviewing those contractual things that we're changing. And then the very last piece is the close of escrow. I met a top agent yesterday doing about 60 transactions a year. And she was very prideful when she said she goes to every single closing at the title company and sits there with them and then gives them a basket at the end of it. And I said, that's why you're only doing 60 transactions. And she looked at me like I was an alien. She goes, what are you talking about? She was so proud of that level of service that she was providing her clients. And I said, we were doing 145 transactions a year, and I never went to any escrows. I would stop by very purposefully at the very, very end. If I knew their appointment was at 1 and the average appointment was about 1 hour, I'd stop about 10 minutes earlier than that. And I'd pop in and say, man, I'm glad I got to see you guys. I was trying to get over here, but got held up in a transaction. I just wanted to be here for you. I want you to know how important I am or how important you are to me. So I'm here saying hello, congratulations. They're all done, by the way. They're happy now. They're not getting weird questions. If they needed to call me, they can, and they call my staff. Title's there to help them with that on purpose. Title's the expert there, not you, right? The contracts are done. The contracts are written. There's nothing to negotiate. It's interpretation. The title person's there for that. And then I show up and I'm Vanna White at the very last 5 minutes of it. I kiss babies. I congratulate them, give them a gift or not, and then I leave. Now I've spent 5 or 10 minutes there instead of an hour and a half wasted of my day just because my precious client was closing an escrow. That's leverage, folks. Like it or not, like it, don't like it, it's okay. It's your journey, but that's how you're going to be held down in this business from scaling and getting up to a capacity where I've taught clients to get to 200, 300, 500, 1,000 transactions. And like I said, I had 2 of those clients doing 1,000 transactions. That is 80 plus transactions a month. That is 20 plus transactions a week. If they just did one of those activities alone, that would soak up over half of their business in just that activity. That is not a dollar producing activity. That's when scale breaks. Okay, folks, I appreciate you being here. It's Coach Randy Byrd. I'm here every single Tuesday, 12:30. We're going to be doing this webinar style, so you can ask questions in the chat. And I see some things in the chat now, but I will get back to them. And I appreciate you being here. I've got to bounce for now, but I'll see you next week. It's Coach Randy Byrd saying thank you for being here. Talk to you later. Bye.